We begin with a fundamental truth that most of us resist. We control far less than we think we do. Imagine you're holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more slips through your fingers. This simple image captures one of life's great paradoxes. Our attempts to control often create the very chaos we're trying to avoid. In Japanese philosophy, there's an understanding that excessive attachment to outcomes creates suffering. The word shiganai embodies this wisdom. It roughly translates to "it cannot be helped." But it's not defeatism, it's clarity. Consider a businesswoman who spends months preparing a perfect presentation. She controls her slides, her delivery, her outfit. But she cannot control the projector malfunction, the client's bad mood from an unrelated issue, or the sudden emergency that cuts the meeting short. If she's attached only to a specific outcome, any deviation becomes a personal crisis. The Japanese tea ceremony offers a beautiful illustration. Every movement is intentional, yet masters understand that the ceremony will never be exactly the same twice. The water temperature varies slightly. The guests bring different energies. The season changes the light in the room. The master controls their preparation and presence, but releases attachment to an ideal outcome. This doesn't mean we abandon responsibility or effort. Instead, we distinguish between what we can influence and what we cannot. We pour our energy into our actions and preparation, then release our grip on results. This shift alone can transform anxiety into peace. Think about how much mental energy you spend trying to control things that are fundamentally uncontrollable. You rehearse conversations that may never happen. You create elaborate backup plans for situations that might not arise. You worry about how others will perceive you, as if you could somehow dictate their thoughts. This exhausting mental gymnastics accomplishes nothing except stealing your peace. The reality is that life will always contain variables beyond your reach. Weather changes. People make unexpected decisions. Technology fails. Opportunities appear and disappear according to timing you didn't orchestrate. The more you resist this fundamental truth, the more you suffer. But here's the liberating part. When you stop trying to control everything, you actually become more effective with what you can control. That businesswoman who accepts she cannot control every variable can focus her energy where it matters most, on delivering her message with clarity and passion. When the projector fails, she adapts smoothly instead of panicking, because her worth isn't tied to technological cooperation. The illusion of control keeps us rigid, anxious, and ultimately less capable. The acceptance of our limitations makes us flexible, peaceful, and surprisingly powerful. You cannot control the waves, but you can learn to surf. You cannot control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. This isn't surrender, it's wisdom. It's understanding that your sphere of influence is smaller than your ego wants to believe, but within that sphere, you are mighty. Stop trying to hold the ocean in your hands. Instead, become skilled at navigating its currents. The concept of Mizu no Kokoro, or mind like water, comes from Japanese martial arts and Zen philosophy. It describes a mental state that is simultaneously calm and responsive, like water in a pond. When you throw a pebble into still water, it responds perfectly to the disturbance. The ripples are proportional to the stone, no more, no less. Once the stone settles, the water returns to calm. It doesn't hold onto the disturbance. It doesn't anticipate the next stone with anxiety. It simply is. Our minds, however, rarely work this way. Someone cuts us off in traffic, and we're angry for the next hour. A colleague makes a critical comment, and we replay it for days. We react disproportionately and hold on to disturbances long after they've passed. A practical example. Imagine receiving critical feedback at work. A mind like water receives this information, assesses its validity, extracts what's useful, and lets the emotional charge dissipate. Instead of spending 3 days creating elaborate mental defenses or imagining confrontations, you respond appropriately in the moment and move forward. The Japanese swordsman Miyamoto Musashi wrote about this state in his book of 5 Rings. In combat, a mind clouded by fear or anger cannot respond effectively. Only a mind like water, clear and adaptable, can perceive and react with precision. The brilliance of this philosophy lies in its dual nature. Water is not passive or weak. It's one of nature's most powerful forces. It can wear down mountains and carve through stone. Yet it achieves this through responsiveness, not rigidity. When you strike water, it doesn't resist or fight back. It absorbs the impact, adjusts its form, and returns to equilibrium. This is not weakness. This is supreme strength. Your mind can work the same way. When life strikes you with challenges, disappointments, or unexpected changes, you don't need to harden yourself or build walls. You don't need to catastrophize or ruminate endlessly. You can respond proportionally, extract the lesson or opportunity, and return to your natural state of calm readiness. Consider how much energy we waste maintaining emotional storms long after the triggering event has passed. Your boss criticized your report on Monday, and by Friday you're still mentally defending yourself, imagining what you should have said, feeling resentful during every interaction. The original disturbance lasted 5 minutes. You've kept it alive for 5 days. Water doesn't do this. The stone sinks, the ripples fade, and stillness returns. To cultivate this, try this practice. When something frustrates you today, pause and ask, is my reaction proportional to what happened? Notice how often we create tsunamis from ripples. Then consciously choose to let the water settle. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending nothing matters. It means responding authentically in the moment without amplifying or prolonging the disturbance artificially. The mind, like water, feels everything fully, but holds onto nothing unnecessarily. It remains clear, capable, and ready for whatever comes next. Mono no aware is one of the most beautiful concepts in Japanese aesthetics. It translates roughly to the pathos of things, or an empathy toward things. It's the bittersweet awareness that everything is temporary, and that this very impermanence makes life precious. Think about cherry blossoms, sakura. They bloom magnificently for only 1 or 2 weeks each year. Japanese people organize hanami parties specifically to appreciate them. They don't lament that the blossoms will fall. Instead, they treasure them precisely because they're fleeting. Contrast this with how we often approach life. We fight against change. We mourn when things end, angry that they couldn't last forever. We photograph moments obsessively, trying to hold on to what's already gone. We second-guess past decisions, as if we could somehow change what's already happened. Here's a practical shift. A woman receives a job offer in another city. It's an incredible opportunity, but it means leaving her current community. She spends weeks agonizing, trying to predict the future, attempting to guarantee that the move will be worth it. She's fighting impermanence. With mono no aware, she might think differently. My time in this city has been beautiful, and it's coming to a natural end. My time in the new city will also be beautiful, and will also end. I can appreciate what was, step fully into what's next, and trust that both stages have value. This philosophy doesn't make us cold or indifferent. Actually, it's the opposite. When we accept that our parents won't be here forever, we call them more often. When we know our children will grow and leave, we're more present during bedtime stories. Impermanence, fully accepted, intensifies our appreciation rather than diminishing it. We stop taking things for granted when we recognize their temporary nature. That friendship, that health, that opportunity, that sunset, none of it is guaranteed to return. This awareness doesn't create despair, it creates presence. The Western mindset often views impermanence as a problem to solve. We develop anti-aging creams, photograph everything compulsively, and desperately try to preserve what cannot be preserved. We treat change as failure and endings as tragedy. But Mono no aware teaches that the transient nature of existence is not a flaw. It's the source of beauty and meaning. A diamond is valuable partly because it's rare and enduring, but a rainbow's beauty comes precisely from its brevity. You don't wish the rainbow would last forever. You stop and appreciate it now because it won't. Consider how this shifts your relationship with loss and transition. Instead of clinging desperately to what's ending or second-guessing whether you should have done something differently to make it last, you can honor what was, feel the natural sadness of transition, and open yourself to what comes next. Every chapter of life has its season. Fighting for eternal spring means missing the gifts of autumn. When you embrace mono-no-aware, you stop demanding permanence from an impermanent world. You find peace not in freezing time, but in flowing with it, appreciating each moment for exactly what it is. Precious because it's fleeting, meaningful because it won't return. While Wu Wei originates from Chinese Taoism, it deeply influenced Japanese philosophy and perfectly complements our discussion of flow. Wu Wei means non-doing or effortless action, the art of accomplishing much by forcing little. This sounds paradoxical to Western ears trained on no pain, no gain, and hustle culture. But watch a skilled craftsman, a talented athlete, or an experienced parent, and you'll see Wu Wei in action. They make difficult things look effortless because they're working with natural forces rather than against them. Consider a river. It doesn't force its way to the ocean. It follows the path of least resistance. Yet over time, it carves through mountains. It accomplishes the impossible not through force, but through persistence and alignment with natural laws. In practical terms, imagine a manager trying to motivate a struggling team. The forceful approach, more meetings, stricter deadlines, constant monitoring, pressure. This might extract short-term compliance, but it creates resistance and exhaustion. The Wu Wei approach, understand what naturally motivates each team member. Remove obstacles rather than pushing harder. Create conditions where good work emerges naturally. One approach exhausts everyone. The other creates sustainable excellence. Second-guessing is the opposite of Wu Wei. When you agonize over every decision, you're trying to force certainty in an uncertain world. You're swimming against the current of reality. Wu Wei asks, what if you made the best decision you could with available information, then moved forward with full commitment, adapting as new information emerges? A student studying for exams embodies Wu Wei when she creates optimal conditions, good sleep, effective study methods, regular breaks. Then trust the process rather than cramming anxiously at the last minute. The results often surpass those achieved through sheer force of will. The secret is understanding that effortless doesn't mean without effort. It means effort applied intelligently, in harmony with how things naturally work. A martial artist doesn't muscle through a technique. They understand leverage, timing, and momentum. They use their opponent's energy rather than opposing it with pure strength. This is Wu Wei in motion. Think about areas where you're forcing outcomes through sheer willpower. Perhaps you're trying to control how someone perceives you, pushing conversations in certain directions, carefully managing your image. This is exhausting and often counterproductive. Wu Wei suggests a different path. Be genuinely yourself, speak authentically, and trust that the right connections will form naturally. You'll find this approach requires less energy and produces better results. Or consider creative work. You can sit at your desk, forcing words onto the page through discipline alone, fighting every sentence. Or you can create conditions conducive to creativity, walking, reading, resting, and allow ideas to emerge when they're ready. Both approaches require effort, but one works with your natural creative rhythms while the other battles them. The deepest application of Wu Wei is trusting life itself. Instead of micromanaging every detail and second-guessing every choice, you make thoughtful decisions, then allow them to unfold. You respond to what emerges rather than rigidly demanding specific outcomes. Like water flowing downhill, you take the path that opens before you, adapting to obstacles rather than exhausting yourself against them. This isn't passivity. It's intelligent action, powerful precisely because it's aligned with reality rather than fighting it. Kintsugi is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The philosophy is profound. The breakage and repair become part of the object's history, something to highlight rather than hide. The restored piece is often more beautiful than the original. We all have broken places, mistakes we've made, relationships that ended, opportunities we missed. Our instinct is often to hide these fractures, to pretend they didn't happen, or to endlessly second-guess the moments when things broke. If only I had becomes a prison. We replay past decisions, imagining different outcomes, as if mental time travel could change anything. This keeps us from being fully present in our actual lives. The kintsugi philosophy offers liberation. Yes, it broke. Yes, it was painful. Now what? Can you repair with gold? Can you integrate this experience in a way that makes you more interesting, more compassionate, more complete? Consider someone who started a business that failed. The second-guessing approach. Years of what if I had hired different people, if only the timing had been better, endless analysis of every decision, paralyzed from trying again. The kintsugi approach. I tried something bold. I learned what I learned. These cracks are now part of my story. The gold I use to repair them is wisdom, humility, and better judgment. My next venture will be informed by this experience, not haunted by it. A practical exercise. Think of something you still regret. Instead of asking what if, ask what did this teach me, and how am I different because of this? You're not denying the pain or pretending it didn't matter. You're gilding the cracks with meaning. This philosophy transforms our relationship with failure entirely. When you know that broken things can become more valuable through skilled repair, you become less afraid of breaking. You take risks. You live boldly. You stop second-guessing every decision out of fear. The Western approach to brokenness often involves concealment or disposal. We throw away damaged things. We hide our failures. We reconstruct our histories to minimize mistakes. We present carefully curated versions of ourselves that suggest we've never stumbled. But kintsugi teaches that our breaks and repairs are what make us unique and valuable. Two identical bowls become distinct when one breaks and is repaired with gold. Suddenly, it has character, history, resilience. Your failures, losses, and painful experiences do the same for you. They create depth. They build empathy. They teach lessons that success never could. The gold in kintsugi isn't just aesthetic, it's honest. It says, yes, this broke. I'm not pretending otherwise. But look how I've transformed that breaking into something worth celebrating. This radical acceptance and transformation is available for every area of your life. That divorce taught you what you truly need in partnership. That career setback revealed strengths you didn't know you had. That friendship that ended showed you boundaries you needed to establish. These aren't failures to hide or endlessly regret. They're golden seams in the art of your becoming. When you stop seeing your past as something to fix through mental revision and start seeing it as material for beautiful repair, everything changes. You stop living in yesterday's what-ifs and start living in today's possibilities. Mushin translates as no mind or empty mind, but this is easily misunderstood. It doesn't mean thoughtlessness. It means a mind uncluttered by unnecessary thoughts, especially self-conscious ones. Think about learning to drive. At first, every action requires conscious thought. Check mirror, signal, check blind spot, turn wheel, accelerate. Your mind is full. But an experienced driver performs these actions flawlessly while conducting a conversation. They've achieved a kind of mushin. The actions flow without self-conscious deliberation. Second-guessing is the opposite of mushin. It's the mind constantly watching itself, judging itself, questioning itself. This creates a paralyzing feedback loop. A musician experiences this when they overthink during a performance. Instead of feeling the music, they're thinking, is that note right? What comes next? Are people judging me? The music suffers because consciousness interferes with competence. Mushin appears in many contexts. A surgeon in the flow of an operation isn't thinking, now I should cut here, now I should clamp there. Their training and experience move through them. A parent comforting a crying child doesn't deliberate each action. They naturally respond to the child's needs. To cultivate mushin in daily life, start small. When having a conversation, notice when you're fully present versus when you're thinking about what you'll say next or how you're being perceived. Full presence is a form of mushin. Here's a practice. Choose a routine task, washing dishes, folding laundry, walking to work. Usually, our minds wander to worries, plans, or distractions. Instead, do the task with complete attention, not thinking about the task, but simply being absorbed in it. This is Mushin practice. The relevance to second-guessing is direct. When you cultivate Mushin, you strengthen your ability to act decisively. Then release the action. You make a choice, commit fully, and move forward without the constant mental replay that accomplishes nothing. The paradox of Mushin is that it requires extensive preparation to achieve apparent spontaneity. The martial artist trains for thousands of hours so that in the moment of combat, they don't need to think. The skilled speaker prepares thoroughly so they can deliver naturally without consulting notes or monitoring their performance. This isn't about being unprepared. It's about being so prepared that you can forget preparation and simply be. Your second-guessing mind believes that constant monitoring equals better results. If you just think about it more, analyze it longer, replay it enough times, surely you'll achieve perfection. But Mushin reveals the opposite truth. Your best performance emerges when you stop watching yourself perform. Consider an athlete at a crucial moment. If they're thinking don't miss, everyone is watching, this is important, they'll likely fail. But if they've trained well and can enter Mushin, where their body executes what it knows without interference from anxious thoughts, they'll succeed. The mind becomes transparent, allowing skill to flow through without obstruction. This applies beyond performance situations. In decision-making, Mushin means trusting your judgment without endless deliberation. You've gathered information, considered options, consulted your values. Now decide and move forward. The decision doesn't improve with 3 more hours of anxious contemplation. It improves with committed action and adaptation based on results. Mushin frees you from the exhausting tyranny of self-monitoring and returns you to the effortless competence that lives beneath your worried thinking. Gaman refers to enduring difficult situations with patience and dignity, without complaint. It's often misunderstood as passive suffering, but it's actually an active choice of where to direct your energy. The distinction is crucial. Gaman isn't about tolerating abuse or injustice. It's about recognizing which battles drain more energy than they return, and which discomforts are temporary or inevitable parts of meaningful pursuits. Consider a writer working on a difficult book. Some days the words flow. Other days, every sentence feels like pulling teeth. Gaman isn't about suffering needlessly. It's about not dramatizing the inevitable challenges of any worthwhile endeavor. The second-guessing version looks like this. Maybe I'm not meant to be a writer. Maybe this idea is terrible. Maybe I should try a different approach. Maybe I should quit. Each difficulty triggers existential crisis. The Gaman version, today, is hard. Writing is sometimes hard. This feeling is temporary. I'll do my work anyway. It's not ignoring difficulty. It's not amplifying it with endless mental theatrics. A powerful example comes from Japanese farmers who plant rice. The work is grueling, bent over in mud, hands cramping, sun beating down. They don't pretend it's not difficult. But they also don't spend their energy complaining or questioning whether they should be farmers. They do the work that must be done, finding satisfaction in completion rather than demanding comfort throughout. In modern life, Gaman might look like finishing a challenging degree, recovering from an injury, caring for an aging parent, or building a business. You acknowledge the difficulty without turning it into an identity or a melodrama. This philosophy directly combats second-guessing because it accepts that the path will have obstacles. You don't interpret every difficulty as a sign you've chosen wrongly. You distinguish between this is hard, which is often true and acceptable, and this is wrong, which requires a different response. The modern Western mindset often treats discomfort as evidence of error. If something feels difficult, we assume we're on the wrong path. We expect passion to mean effortless enthusiasm at all times. We think meaningful work should always feel meaningful. But Gaman understands that worthwhile pursuits contain stretches of difficulty, boredom, frustration, and doubt. These feelings don't invalidate your choice. They're simply part of the journey. The marathon runner at mile 20 doesn't think, maybe I'm not meant to be a runner, every time their legs burn. They understand that difficulty is inherent to the endeavor they've chosen. What makes gammon powerful is its psychological efficiency. Complaining and questioning drain energy without changing circumstances. That energy could instead fuel persistence, creativity, or rest. When you stop treating every challenge as a crisis requiring extensive mental analysis, you conserve resources for actual problem solving. You also develop resilience, the confidence that comes from knowing you can endure difficulty without falling apart or abandoning your commitments at the first sign of discomfort. Gammon doesn't mean never quitting or never complaining. It means choosing consciously. Some situations genuinely warrant complaint or departure. But most daily difficulties simply require endurance, showing up when you don't feel like it, continuing when results seem distant, maintaining dignity when circumstances are undignified. This steady persistence, without drama or constant self-questioning, builds character and achieves goals that emotional reactivity never could. The path forward isn't always comfortable, but gammon reminds us that comfort isn't always necessary. Shoshin means beginner's mind, approaching situations with openness and lack of preconceptions, even in areas where you have expertise. It's a core concept in Zen Buddhism and remarkably practical for daily life. The problem with expertise is that it can become rigidity. We develop mental models, and then we see only what fits those models. We think we know how things will unfold, how people will react, what outcomes are possible. This certainty creates suffering when reality inevitably diverges from our expectations. Shoshin asks, what if you approached each situation fresh? What if you held your knowledge lightly, ready to revise it? A marriage counselor shared this example. Couples often think they know exactly what their partner will say or do. He always, and she never, become prisons. One partner makes a genuine change, but the other doesn't notice because they're seeing through old assumptions, not present reality. Shoshin would mean seeing your partner newly each day, not naive or forgetful of history, but open to who they are now. This philosophy devastates second-guessing because second-guessing relies on the assumption that you can predict outcomes with certainty. If I do X, then Y will happen. But Shoshin acknowledges the humility of the beginner. We don't know as much as we think we do. Consider a teacher who's taught 5th grade for 20 years. Without Shoshin, they assume they know exactly what this year's students need before meeting them. With Shoshin, they bring their experience, but meet each new class with fresh eyes, noticing what's unique about these particular children. A practical application. Before your next important meeting or difficult conversation, consciously set aside your assumptions about how it will go. Enter with Shoshin, prepared but open, experienced but not predetermined. Notice how this changes both your anxiety beforehand and your effectiveness during. The liberation here is profound. If you approach life with beginner's mind, you stop trying to predict and control every outcome. You bring your best preparation and then remain open to what actually unfolds. You can't second-guess a future you're not pretending to know with certainty. Beginner's mind doesn't mean abandoning your knowledge or pretending ignorance. It means holding expertise as tools available for use rather than lenses that filter and distort everything you see. The expert who clings to their mental models becomes blind to new information. The expert who maintains Shoshin remains perpetually capable of learning and adapting. Think about how much anxiety comes from false certainty. You're convinced you know how someone will respond to your request. So you rehearse the conversation dozens of times, preparing for the rejection you've already decided is inevitable. Then, when you actually ask, they surprise you with enthusiasm. All that worry was based on a prediction that turned out wrong. Shoshin would have you prepare thoughtfully, but hold your predictions loosely, understanding that people and situations contain multitudes you cannot fully anticipate. This mindset also prevents the arrogance that creates blindness. When you approach situations thinking you already know everything relevant, you stop paying attention. You miss subtle cues, new developments, and changing contexts. The beginner's mind stays alert and curious. It asks questions. It notices details. It remains genuinely interested in what's actually happening rather than what should be happening according to past patterns. In this openness lives both peace and effectiveness. Peace because you're not clinging to rigid expectations. Effectiveness because you're responding to reality rather than your assumptions about reality. Ichigo ichi is a Japanese idiom that originates from tea ceremony philosophy. It means one time, one meeting, or one chance in a lifetime. It reminds us that each encounter is unique and will never occur again in exactly the same way. This sounds simple, but its implications are revolutionary. How many times do we go through interactions on autopilot, assuming there will always be another chance? How often do we postpone full engagement because we're distracted by past regrets or future worries? Imagine attending a family dinner while second-guessing a work decision. Physically present but mentally absent. You miss the actual moment. Your niece telling a funny story, your father's laugh, the taste of your mother's cooking. That specific gathering of people in that mood, with that conversation, will never happen again. It's gone. Ichigo ichi. This philosophy doesn't mean every moment must be profound or Instagram-worthy. It means whatever this moment is, it's the only version of it you'll ever have. A tea master preparing tea focuses completely on that preparation, not because it's more important than other tasks, but because it's the task that exists now. For someone trapped in second-guessing, Ichigo ichi is particularly powerful. You're worried about yesterday's decision or tomorrow's potential outcome, while today, the only day you actually have, slips by unnoticed. A practical shift. In your next conversation, try this. Instead of thinking about what you'll say next or how you're being perceived, simply listen, as if this is the only time you'll ever hear this person speak. Notice how the quality of the interaction changes. A businessman shared this story. He was so consumed with anxiety about losing a client that he barely engaged during their final meeting. Years later, he realized he'd squandered a meaningful relationship's last chapter by being mentally absent, obsessing about a future he couldn't control instead of honoring the present that actually existed. Ichigo ichi doesn't prevent planning or reflection, but it insists that while you're in this moment, be in this moment. Your analysis of the past and concerns about the future will be more effective anyway if they're done during time specifically allocated for them, rather than contaminating every present experience. The tragedy of second-guessing is that it robs you twice. First, it steals your present attention, leaving you distracted and only partially engaged with what's actually happening. Second, it creates new regrets. You'll look back and realize you weren't fully there for moments that mattered. You spent your daughter's childhood mentally rehearsing work presentations. You spent dinners with aging parents worrying about decisions already made. These moments are irretrievable, and your absence from them compounds over time into a hollow feeling that life is somehow passing you by. Ichigo ichi offers a different way. Treat this conversation, this meal, this walk, this project, as if it's the only one of its kind, because it is. You might have 1,000 conversations with this person, but never this exact one, with these words, in this light, with this particular quality of attention. When you fully grasp the unrepeatable nature of each moment, urgency replaces autopilot. Not frantic urgency, but present urgency. The understanding that now is when life happens, and now deserves your full attention. Tomorrow will have its own moments worthy of presence. But they don't exist yet. Only this exists. Only now. We've explored 9 aspects of Japanese detachment philosophy. Now comes the practical question. How do you actually live this way? The key is recognizing that these aren't rules to follow, but perspectives to practice. You won't achieve perfect watermind or complete mushin. The goal is progress, not perfection, which is itself a principle of this philosophy. Start with awareness. For 1 week, simply notice when you're second-guessing. Don't judge it, just observe. I'm replaying yesterday's conversation again. I'm anxious about next week's presentation. I'm questioning whether I should have taken this job. Awareness is always the first step. Then practice the pause. Between the trigger, a decision, an outcome, a change, and your habitual second-guessing response, insert a pause. In that pause, ask, what's actually within my control right now? Usually, the answer is much smaller than we think, and more achievable. Choose one or two concepts that resonate most strongly and focus there. Perhaps you're drawn to kintsugi, seeing your failures as places to apply golden wisdom. Or maybe Mano no Aware speaks to you, appreciating what you have while you have it. Go deep with one or two rather than shallow with all 9. Create environmental reminders. One person keeps a small bowl of water on their desk as a reminder of Mizu no Kokoro. Another has a piece of kintsugi pottery where they'll see it daily. These aren't superstitious. They're simply cues to remember what you're practicing. The integration also requires self-compassion. You will forget these principles. You will lie awake second-guessing. You will grasp for control. When this happens, the philosophy itself offers the response. This is impermanent. Return to the present. Begin again with Shoshin. A final practice, each evening. Reflect on one moment during the day when you could have applied these principles. Not to judge yourself, but to strengthen the recognition pattern. When I was worrying about that email, I could have practiced Mushin and just sent it. With time, you'll catch yourself earlier, during the worry, then before it, then preventing it altogether. The measure of success isn't never second-guessing. It's reducing the duration and intensity of second-guessing when it arises. It's recovering your equilibrium faster. It's spending more of your life in actual living and less in mental rehearsal of past and future. Integration happens gradually through repeated small choices. Each time you notice yourself spiraling into what-if thinking and consciously redirect to what is, you strengthen a new neural pathway. Each time you choose presence over rumination, flow over force, acceptance over resistance, you become slightly more fluent in this way of being. The philosophies work synergistically. Practicing one naturally supports the others. When you cultivate beginner's mind, you naturally release attachment to outcomes. When you embrace impermanence, you naturally become more present. When you develop mind like water, second-guessing loses its grip. The transformation isn't dramatic or sudden. You won't wake up one day completely free from anxiety and doubt. Instead, you'll notice subtle shifts. A worry that would have consumed 3 days now resolves in 3 hours. A decision that would have paralyzed you for weeks now feels clear within days. The mental energy previously spent on endless analysis becomes available for creativity, connection, and actual living. This is the promise, not perfection, but progress toward a life less haunted by what was or might be, and more alive to what is. We began with a question: what if your constant need to control and second-guess is actually what's holding you back? Through 9 chapters of Japanese philosophy, from a mind like water to the art of golden repair, from beginner's mind to the understanding that this moment will never come again, we've explored an alternative way of being in the world. This isn't about abandoning responsibility or drifting passively through life. It's about understanding where your power actually lies. You cannot control outcomes, other people, or many circumstances. But you can control your preparation, your effort, your attitude, and most importantly, your response to what unfolds. The second-guessing that keeps you awake at night changes nothing about the past and provides no certain map of the future. What it does do is steal your present, the only time in which you can actually live, love, create, and find meaning. The Japanese concepts we've explored offer a path to something profound. Peace not through control, but through flow. Confidence not through certainty, but through commitment to doing your best and releasing the rest. Depth not through grasping, but through full presence. Imagine living with less anxiety about whether you've made the right choices. Imagine responding to life's challenges with the calm adaptability of water rather than the rigid brittleness of ice. This is available to you, not through perfection, that's another form of grasping, but through practice. Each moment offers a new opportunity to choose. Will you grasp or flow? Will you resist or respond? The flow of life continues whether you swim against it or with it. When you stop fighting the current, When you stop second-guessing every decision, when you bring your full presence to what is rather than what was or might be, that's when you truly start living. Stop second-guessing. Start living. The flow of life awaits.